Okay, doing one today on this rough but cleaned up okay, I guess. Maco 300. This was kind of a junker that I had, and then I got the nice clean one with the M2057s in it. And I did a video on the clean one with the M2057s, and a whole lot of people said, oh, that's nice, and they wanted it, and would I sell it? And I said, I'll sell it for the right price. And quite a few people jumped on that, like, it's mine, gimme, I want it, you know. And I'm like, okay, show me the money. And nobody ever showed me the money. And also, after I thought about it, I'm like, you know, I like M2057s, and I like Macos, and I decided I'm going to keep that one for myself. That's over with. I'm keeping it. So since I had this junker, I was like, let me see if I can get that up and running. So I got some tubes for it, some 6KN6 tubes that I used. I think originally called for 8950s for the finals, and 6LB6s for the drivers. And this one is 2 driving 5. Interesting configuration. Maco did a lot of changes with these amps. Some were 1 driving 4 with the M2057s, which is my keeper, so don't ask. Yeah, I'm keeping that. And then there were some that were 2 driving 4, and then some that were 2 driving 5, like this one. One thing I found out, it took me a minute to figure it out, is that if it's a 5 tuber, and since this transformers are 12 volt, I'm like, how do they, not 2 driving 5, but the 7 tuber, how do they divide the filaments, you know, if you're using 6 volt tubes? So what I found out with a lot of research is they didn't. If it's a 5 tuber, they use 8950s, which are 12 volt filament. So they didn't have to put the filaments in series, is what they did. And while I got the camera on this chart, if you can see the pinouts I drew in pencil, that the 8950s have more of a full pinout than some of the other variations of that tube. So not only is the 8950 a 12 volt filament, it's got, you know, filaments are 1 in 12, which is, you know, the same on all of them. But the cathode, the first, well, it's not a grid, but the cathode is, on this one, is pins 2 and 6. And if you look over here for the 6LB6 driver tube, and from the schematic, the cathode is only connected to pin 2. So if you replace 6LB6 and some of the other versions, and you use them for finals, and you know, you change the filament, then you're like, I'm not getting anything out. Well, one thing to be to check is, since the cathode on the finals supposedly went to pins 2 and 6, it might be bringing it in on pin 6. And on the 6LB6, pin 6 is not connected. Same with pin 3, the screen on the upper left of that tube. The 6LB6 just has a screen on pin 3. And on the 8950, it has a screen on pins 3 and 11. So when you interchange, substitute tubes, not only check your filament, but do your research and double check the pinouts. And make sure that the input to that pin is actually going to the right pin number. Because again, if you switched out some 6LB6s, and other tubes have different forms of that too, it's kind of the same pinout, but some double up on certain pins and some do not. Like, you know, to the upper right, 4 and 10 for the suppressor grid, and over here 4 and 10 for the suppressor grid. So that's the same. 5 and 9 for grid 1, And over here, just pin 5 alone for grid 1. So if you, again, you put that tube for a final, and it might be taking it in on pin 9. And again, on this one and some others, pin 9 is not connected. So that's just something to be aware of. They made, you know, maybe 12 or so different substitutes for these tubes, you know, 8950, 6LF6, 6KN6, 6KD6, 6LX6, 6LR6. They make a smaller 6JM6, so I don't know them all off the top of my head, so don't ask. I mean, use Google and do some pin data research on your own on that, but just something to be mindful of. So anyway, this is the Maco 300. Put a little silver overlay on the face, even though it didn't come out that well. It's got a few bumps here and there on it, but overall it looks a lot better than it did before, you know, the overlay. And going over top, now remember this was my junker. And there's your 5 finals. There's a little mod I did to that one. You know, people don't like mods. They say, hey, you know, the factory did this and the factory did that. Well, one of my sayings is the factory are trying to do the best they can and keep the costs under control. So the factory will take a lot of shortcuts. And normally, if you know what you're doing, you can take a factory amp and you can make it better. And I ain't talking about more watts and all that other stuff. You know, the factory's going to cut corners and save money, and one of the corners they cut on this one, I kind of modified a little bit. It'd take a good eye to figure that one out too, you know, what was modded. I've mentioned a gimmick before, and people are like, what's a gimmick? For the meter in this, it uses a gimmick. That's the schematic of that gimmick. It's an actual sensor, I guess, but it's not actually touching. This is the meter, and that little wire there is just near the output coil, but I'm not actually touching in it. That's a gimmick. And if you see that little white wire there going through the tank coil, that's a gimmick. It's not actually touching it, but it's still picking up enough capacitance and inductance to make the meter move. Also, to run the 5th tube, again, if you got an odd number of tubes and you're putting 2 in series, you know, 12-volt transformers and 6-volt tubes, I was like, well, how did they do that odd number tube? You know, that got me for a minute. But again, what they did was they used 8950s only for the odd number, so they used 12-volt. So since I ended up with the odd number and I didn't want to use a dropping resistor on one tube like that, I added a 6-volt transformer. So basically the 2 main transformers run the four of the final tubes, and the separate transformer, that 6-volt, it runs the center one and the 2 drivers. So that's another little mod I made, so I can use the 7-tube configuration with 6-volt filaments without using a dropping resistor. Dropping resistors work, but you know, that extra power that it sucks up, it goes up in heat, and I didn't want that. So other than the little mod I did and the filament transformer, I tried to keep it pretty stock on this one. We're gonna put the camera down and carefully turn this thing over right quick. Also, while I'm thinking about it and looking at it, Maco also made versions of this with 1 transformer and some with 2 transformers. This one has the 2 transformers in it. That's just getting old. Also, this didn't have that original board in it that took in the snap-in caps. It had old actual caps wired in it, and you know, modern snap-in caps like that are a lot more compact, and these are cheap and common now. So this board is actually another board that Nomad sells. He sells a Maco 3 capacitor board that takes in the snap-in. So I made it easy for myself, and since I got a lot of snap-ins, I bought the Nomad board and put in the snap-ins, and these caps are rated at 330 UF, where the originals are 120. It's got a lot more capacitance in the capacitors than the original does. Again, why do manufacturers do that? Again, cost. Back in the day, electrolytic capacitors were pretty expensive, and so they skimped on the capacitors. A lot of amp makers back in the day. By the way, that's a Nomad keying circuit in this too. No preamp, just a basic 2 driving 5 on this one. I upgraded it with 10 amp diodes, even though that looks ugly, but had to fit them big giant 10 amp diodes in there. The 10 amp diodes now cost about, I don't know, a dime to a quarter. So that's an easy upgrade. I had somebody tell me, yeah, don't do that because diodes are designed to open when they get overload. That's not true. Diodes short when they overload. And this amp already got that little 2 ohm 10 watt. That's a surge resistor, or kind of like a poor man's soft start. So when it's starting up, those capacitors are dead, and that gives it a little bit of current limiting until those caps charge up. It's poor man's soft start on that. Other than that, basic amp, grounded grid. It puts a little bit of voltage on the screen, not much, so it's not really turbocharged, but they put a little bit of it. They put 16 volts on the screen, which is basically nothing, but it gives it just a teeny tiny kick. That there is the input tuner. That's the driver tank circuit. And that's the tune and load for the final. Just a basic grounded grid amp. Nothing special, you know, about the Maco, but you know, the Maco 300 with 2 driving 5, it does what it's supposed to do. And I got some fairly new 6KN6 tubes in it. So I guess that's about all I wanted to go through here. So we're gonna put the camera down again and turn her around. Carefully, and hopefully we haven't knocked anything out of tune, and we're gonna fire her up on the dummy load. All right, amp on. Up and running. Gonna give her a few seconds, and I guess while we waiting for it to warm up, tune and load, driver tune on the side, and then the grid or the input tune on the back. And that's about all the tuning for this amp. And hopefully she's still tuned up. My normal mud duck radio on a dummy load. No false watts, and 2000 watt scale. Let's put her on average first and key her down. So she's dead keying right under 200. Audio, 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 audio. Talking about 350. Shishing almost 4. My whistle broke. Let me see if I can get my whistle to work. My whistle was working, but I did all the talking and I get dry mouth, right? Tram doctor's getting old. And that's whistling about 400 average. Audio, 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 audio. And we gotta put her on peak. Do 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 do. Audio, 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 audio. Just talking under 500 peak. Audio, and that's all the Maco 300 is supposed to do. And again, I'm hitting it with the little mud duck Chris radio going into it. Hello, 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 hello. Audio, audio, audio. Audio, not hollering, not growling, no no arcing, no nothing. Anyway, that's gonna be my used to be rough, but cleaned up okay. Definitely not perfect, but came out decent. Maco 300. So anyway, we're gonna put this one away and go to the next project. All right, that's it for this one. Bye.